Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining this online lecture. The topic of today's lecture is Note, Know, Choose, a modern counseling approach based on early Buddhist teachings. We're very happy and honored to have invited Dr. George Lee Cheung, who is our teacher and also the founder of this counseling approach, Note, Know, Choose, to deliver today's lecture. Dr. Lee, as many of you may know, is a founding member of our Master of Buddhist Counseling program and a postgraduate diploma in professional practice of Buddhist Counseling program in HKU. He received his PhD and MA in clinical psychology from Alliance International University, Los Angeles, MA in marriage and family therapy from the University of South California, and MA in Buddhist Studies here in HKU. He's the author of the book titled The Guide to Buddhist Counseling, which is one of the first guidebooks on Buddhist counseling. He has also published in Buddhist Mindfulness, the application of Buddhism to psychotherapy, acculturation, and family conflicts in international student psychology. Clinically, he is a California licensed psychologist, a registered clinical psychologist in Hong Kong, and a fellow member of the Asian Academy of Family Therapy. So, without further ado, let's invite Dr. Lee to start today's lecture. Dr. Lee, please.
Thank you, Ben, for the introduction. Thank you. So, this is 10 a.m. morning time in Hong Kong, and I know this is different time in different places. Some of you may have finished your day. But either way, I would like to invite all of us to come back to this moment and have a chat together. And to start with, before I go into any details, I would like to invite us to listen mindfully to a sound of a singing bowl. So this is usually how I start my classes and lecture, because I feel that we are all too busy in our mind. We are all too busy pursuing things, grasping onto things, or like holding on to things in the past or worrying about the future. But it's always nice to come back to the present moment and enjoy a time of being with you. And today I'm extremely grateful because I know that many of my friends, colleagues from now to the past are coming to this lecture to hear what I have to say. I'm really humbled, and thank you so much for making the time for this lecture. So let me briefly introduce myself. I know some of you may know me. I'm George, and I was born and raised in Hong Kong. But when I was about 18, I went to the United States to get my college degree. And then at the very beginning, I was a psych major, and then went into marriage and family therapy, later into clinical psychology. So during this journey, I was initially trained as a so-called Western psychologist, getting licensed in the United States. And there were a certain point in my life that I would believe, oh, psychology is the best. It is the answer to all the suffering. Until there was a time that when I started teaching, I ran into a very difficult situation. Me, myself, suffered from depression for some time. At that time, somehow, the psychology that I believe in wasn't as useful as I thought. And that's the time that I started to get in touch with Buddhism. And only by listening to Dharma talk, try meditation, I can finally find and cultivate that inner peace that I've been longing for a long time. And since then, I try hard to think about, is there any better way to integrate Buddhism and psychology or psychotherapy so that more people can benefit from this approach? And now, here we are. So today I will present to you how I try to conceptualize this integration. And to start with, I would like to tell you the goal for today. I will talk briefly about what my definition of Buddhist counseling is and go into the details of what are the processes, including something that if you have a counseling, psychology, a clinical psychology background, maybe we heard it before, including assessment, conceptualization, and intervention, and finally open the floor for some Q&A. Before that, I want to continue the story of my main research question for the last couple of years. What is a better way to integrate Buddhism and contemplative mental health treatment? This is a very important question to me, especially on the starting of this journey. I kind of like hold into a mindset of I am a clinical psychologist. I know this, I know that. I was an assistant professor in psychology, so I should know enough that using my existing knowledge in psychology, I can pick some of the useful things in Buddhism to complement, to supplement the approach and make it better. But very soon, I start to question myself of, should I do it this way? Because there's so many other people are doing so well. Dialectical behavioral therapy, arguably acceptance and commitment therapy, and many other approaches. But I start to question, would that be a ultimate way to apply Buddhism in our contemporary world? And my thought is, maybe I should take a step forward by letting down to who I am, the role as so-called psychologist, assistant professor, whatever, and just humbly start to learn Buddhism as a student. And what I find is amazing because many people, including myself, in maybe like if you talk to me 10 years ago, when you talk to me about Buddhism, my instant reaction would be, this is a religion. Like we don't do religion in psychology or in therapy, and period. Stop the conversation. But when I started to really study it as a student and let go of my assumptions and try to see it from the Buddhist lens, I realized that from my terminology, I think Buddhism is more like a psychology. It basically talks about there is suffering in the world and what would be the way that we can liberate from the suffering. And that's it. And this is all psychological. They have a very comprehensive study of how our mind function, how can we work with body and mind to sustain attention, to be disengaged from all our so-called defilements, hindrances, so that we can come back to a moment of peace and not be impacted by certain kind of things that we have been doing that actually trick us or harm ourselves. So in a way, I do think this is a very powerful psychological approach. And because of that, I have been trying to transform that, translate that, and develop that into a counseling model. So I really like this picture. And this picture certainly gave me the idea of my book like that. This picture was from Professor Lumi Gomez, one of my role models in life, and who is actually the only person that I know who get a PhD in clinical psychology, become a licensed psychologist, and also a PhD in Buddhist studies, and someone who is very successful in both fields. And this is the lecture I went to, and then a student of him helped him to draw this picture. And I find it very fascinating how to use ancient wisdom from the Buddha to contemporary world in therapy. So I would say when I term Buddhist counseling, I actually mean that in our current development in psychology, the framework, the logistic, the basic assumptions of counseling and psychology actually have been working really well. But it's just the theoretical orientation or the ground theory, the philosophy of how you do something, it really determines how well you connect to a client, which means the worldview of a therapist directly influence whether the client will find it agreeable and be able to follow that. So in the United States, there are many traditional psychotherapy approaches like psychoanalysis, humanistic, or CBT. All of them were developed in a more Western culture that I call by middle to upper class Caucasians, Europeans, or Americans that really focus on certain kind of population. And later in the development of psychology, there are more and more effort to make it applicable to people internationally from different cultures so that it can have a lot of cultural adjustment to increase their international competency, which is good. But my way of going about it is maybe we can still use the framework of counseling when you talk to someone, how to use talk therapy, how to listen, how to apply the micro skills, like those kind of framework. At the same time, try to use Buddhism as the ground or theoretical orientation so that the Buddhist thought worldview would be more congruent with people from many different cultures, especially different Asian cultures. So say like me, I'm Chinese, people who are Taiwanese, Korean, Japanese, or even in like Sri Lanka, Nepal, Bangladesh, India, Buddhism would not be a novel idea. And when people talk about, oh, like you are too attached to something, you're clinging too much on something, or life is impermanence, those kind of ideas are conceptual cultural neurons that ingrained into the seeds of all the social and cultural background. So when we develop something from a culture, it will be the most cultural congruent way to get in touch with people. So this is one very important rationale. I think like many psychological models that are doing very well already. And one thing that can do it better is maybe use a more ancient Eastern approach so that it can reach different audiences. And this is what I'm doing. And that's why I try to define Buddhist counseling is basically any kind of framework or professional counseling, but the orientation is the integration of Buddhist teaching. So this is a very generic definition. And for my more specific definition will be kind of a mouthful. Buddhist counseling is a holistic counseling approach that helps clients to use each therapeutic encounter to open a gateway to the cultivation of mind for the purpose of gaining understanding of human nature in accord with the Buddhist view of reality. Every time, even though like this is from my published article talking about no truth and all that, but every time when I read it, the first instinct that I have is I don't understand what I'm talking about. And I don't know whether it happened to some of the professors or practitioners here. But what I actually mean is all matter is the cultivation of mind. So in Buddhism, we believe that what actually makes us suffer most of the time is how we think. Like, how do we grasp on those thoughts, or we really want something that is unrealistic, or how we think we should be, who we are, and we are so stubborn and rigid about that. So cultivation of the mind have many different meanings, such as, oh, our mind can be more flexible, to be more detached so that we can see different angles and we don't have to grasp on the things that we thought that we would have to have. Or a different meaning would be, in Buddhism, the Buddhist teaching talk about different kind of worldview, like how the world is actually impermanent. There are dukkha, there are suffering that come with our existence. Or like things are all dependent on arising. Like when we are able to use those kind of views to see the world and see ourselves, supposedly we will be much less suffered. This is the main way, like cultivation of mind. And of course, like talking about something even more secular is mindfulness movement. Mindfulness is a cultivation of mind. It's part of the Buddhist teaching that taught us about how we can concentrate, we can balance our mind in certain ways so that we can reach a effect of equanimity when we are in that anchoring mind in the present moment. So a lot of disturbing thoughts, unrealistic expectations would not arise so that we can have less suffering. So that's part of the cultivation of mind. So in this lecture, I will talk about how I think we can use different ways to help our client cultivate their mind using certain kind of like more secular, just a philosophy, wisdom kind of Buddhism, to see that if we can understand ourselves in the world in this way, then many suffering will dissipate. So here we go. To start with, Buddhism, from my interpretation into Buddhist counseling, I would say the treatment goal would be towards the realization of non-self or clinging to the notion of belief of self, which is a very fundamental Buddhist teaching that one reason why we suffer, or big cause of why we suffer, is that we are clinging on to certain kind of like identity, who I am. Our ego consciousness just have to believe that I'm George and George has to be this way. And my friends, my family, my colleagues, my mentor, my students should treat me this way. And if not, then I'm really, really upset. And I try very hard to change them or like negate them. But either way, pushing them away or trying to change them the way I want is very costly and would not bring sustainable happiness. But once we move towards realizing who I am as George is actually not a soul or not certain kind of inherently existing phenomenon. The reason why we have George, reason that why we have you and I is because there's so many things happen, because we have our parents, because we have our experiences, we have our upbringing, we have our body, we have our choices, we have different kind of mindset that we have been doing for a long time, so it become habitual. So we are almost like wired into seeing certain things or wanting certain things without thinking about that, without any mental distance. So that's why we suffer. But once we're able to see that I don't have to be me, it doesn't have to have an I in any kind of formula to know that, yes, in some perspective, this is me, this is George. But if I don't have to hold too much onto this is who I am, this is what I want, this is how I define myself in relation to other people, that actually we will suffer a lot less. So in Buddhism, of course, it is a more religious, spiritual practice if we talk about more traditional Buddhism. So that when clients, or I should say practitioners, people who practice Buddhism, the end goal will be totally liberation from suffering, or we say nibbana or nirvana. But I do think in Buddhist counseling, most of the clients do not come here, hey, George, teach me some way so that I can have a total liberation, become an arahant, become a Bodhisattva. Usually not like that. Usually people are having some suffering and then they feel that I want to do something so that I can liberate from this immediate suffering. And then they are okay, they are gone, they are back on the road and having a reasonably happy life. So I would say in Buddhist counseling, it's moving towards like being guided by the wisdom of the non-self. And then we can move client to become increasingly less attached to the self-identity, to belief of self, and be able to flexibly see things, see themselves in different angle. When you create that little emptiness can give rise to many kind of different possibilities. So this will be what I see as the overarching treatment goal of Buddhist counseling. And the process of Buddhist counseling very similar to what you see in psychology and other counseling models. So I would say the starting point would be compassionate attunement, or in psychology, sometimes we call empathic attunement. Like compassion in Buddhism has a lot of different meanings, like how we cannot be truly compassionate when we are too attached to ourselves. Because if I'm too attached to ourselves, I would only be able to think about how to make you happy because it makes me happy. I want you to be happy so that you can make me happy, that kind of way. That would become a lot of pressure, a lot of rejection, a lot of misunderstanding. But compassion is, I truly just want you to be happy, and I'm willing to understand your suffering so that I know what might be the things that I could do to make you happy. That attunement comes with whether we can use our heart, our suffering, our vulnerability to deeply connect it with other people's suffering and vulnerability. And in that process, we need to be composed, we need to be confident and calm, and be able to have loving kindness that I would have the wish that you don't suffer. And we will think about what collaboratively we can do something, or sometimes if we cannot do anything, I'm just willing to be here with you to accompany your suffering. That is a compassionate attunement. And then we have the assessment, conceptualization, and intervention. And I will go through each one of them briefly today. So in Buddhism, if you're interested in Buddhism, some of you may be expert in Buddhism or you're new to Buddhism, like basically the Four Noble Truths is the most important intervention in Buddhism. So the Four Noble Truths goes as when the Buddha realizes that over life and life, from my meditation, from my contemplation and practices, I summarize like a few rules of reality, including how do we suffer to how do we liberate from them. And he, in an organized way, share in his teaching. So the first noble truth, dukkha. Dukkha is a Pali, a Sanskrit word that means suffering. The first noble truth of dukkha is actually not easy one to take already, because in Buddhism, we assume that life comes with suffering. That's basically for mundane people, for so-called uncultivated people, it will be any way that we can sustainably, ultimately happy. We all have suffering. But think about our life. Do you suffer? You may be like, oh, you may be having a good life, have a fancy car, have a large house, have a beautiful family, then you don't think you suffer. But what about if you have a beautiful baby and you need to change diapers and it's full of like poo that you don't want to clean, right? Or like, what if your car break down? What if like your health suffer? Like suddenly something happened, changes, or like something that just out of your expectation that happened, then there is inevitably there would be suffering. As long as we exist, that we have suffering. This is a very important truth in Buddhism. So the thing is, dukkha, like I said, connecting to people's suffering without judgment, being non-judgmental is very important, because so many times as a counselor, psychologist, we may actually think, oh, like you shouldn't think this way. Oh, I am better than you, so let me teach you. And as long as we have that comparison, we will be distancing ourselves away from our client. And only by taking away those distances, seeing that, well, I respect myself and I respect yourself the same. Understanding that maybe in your situation, you have tried your best. And if I were in your situation, I may not even know better. But let me listen to it. Let me understand. And together, let's see what we can do. So that is dukkha, and translate that into how in Buddhist counseling, empathic or compassionate attunement. And causes of suffering is second noble truth. For things that happen in life, all of them must have different causes and conditions that led to an effect. So in Buddhism, we call causes and effect, or causes, conditions, and effect. There's nothing just suddenly give rise to a phenomenon. Look at the sun, look at the flowers, look at the trees, look at me, look at you. There must be many things that happened before and happening now to sustain our provisional existence. So especially true for dukkha. When you're depressed, when you're anxious, when you're traumatized, it's very easy for us to limit and narrow our mind to, well, it's because of my partner, it's because of my father, my mother, or that accident or that disaster that make me suffer. But all of them, all the situations that we blame, we resist, and we criticize is just part of the conditions. If we're able to step back and see what are the all things that happen contributing to our suffering, we will see it's never just one reason. There are multiple reasons interacting with each other. When we're able to accept the multiple factors and reasons, we're actually less clinging on to the only reason that liberate our mind a little bit. And causes of suffering in a very traditional Buddhist way will be mainly craving. We want something, we grab onto something, and that's why we suffer. And in assessment, that will be exploring, understanding for both the counselor and client to understand what may be something happening in the environment and inside their mind that contribute together to that suffering. Before we do anything, just that insight to, those are the things that I'm suffering from. Those are the things that I'm like carrying on my shoulders. Those are the things I have on my plate that actually bring some relief already. Third noble truth, cessation of dukkha, cessation of suffering. Okay, so there's suffering, those are the causes, and knowing the causes is not enough. Knowing that the causes can actually collapse, causes can actually disappear or be changed, then cessation of suffering, I would compare that to conceptualization or integrated conceptualization. So conceptualization, later I will talk more about this. Understand like why our clients suffer. When you understand the courses, then you understand what may be changeable, what may be acceptable, so that we don't cling on to or resist it the same way. Finally, the fourth noble truth, path to cease dukkha, path to cease suffering. That would be one, like maybe the most important thing. That's mainly the cultivation or the self-cultivation or mind cultivation. Okay, now we get a little insight of how things happen, why things happen. But in order to change, we cannot just suddenly expect magic miracle to happen. We have to cultivate bit by bit, day by day, to slowly, gradually change our way of seeing things, changing our mind, changing our habits, so that we don't see the world and ourselves in the same way. Perhaps in a more wholesome and skillful way that would not lead us to the same amount of suffering. So this is comparing the Four Noble Truths to the Buddhist counseling model. And to make it more realistic, I know that is a lot of conceptual thing. I would want to do a pseudo case based on some of the real clients, combining their story and talk about some of the things that are pretty realistic in sessions. So Mayan, of course, like this is not real. This is not the real person. This is an actress. Okay, so using an actress, you know that this is not the real client. Mayan is a 36 years old Chinese single female who works as a social worker at a community mental health center. She was self-referred due to her anxiety problems. So when she came to see me, a very nice lady, but also being very anxious. So she's friendly. How should I say? Like when you talk to her, you wouldn't feel that she is actually suffering so much from all the different things. She has managed it pretty well, but only she's the one who knows that when she's by herself, when she's at home, that there are many times that she cried or whined or fight with her family, but she tried to present herself in a very functional and very nice and friendly way. So she was actually very, very good to work with. But her presenting problem is she's functioning reasonably well at her job, just like how she came across to me, and she's often perceived as a reliable and responsible colleague by both her colleague and her supervisor. However, she suffers from severe anxiety that she often worries about making mistakes and how she's being evaluated by others at work. To avoid mistakes, she actually has some OCD. She sometimes checks certain documents repeatedly for 1 to 2 hours before submission, which gives her a lot of stress. So the extent is that like social worker, some of the positions, they need to turn in some forms for the client. And those forms, from what she described, is she can use like about 15 minutes to fill it out. And if you double check, like it wouldn't take more than 5 minutes. But when I saw her, she have to use like 1 to 2 hours, like for every document. And sometimes it delays her work and give her a lot of stress. And the worst thing is not about OCD checking. It is about she cannot let her colleague to see her OCD because she's so afraid to be rejected and to be judged. So she tried to develop many different ways to make herself look like she's just working very hard, but then she's actually not being productive. She's just repeatedly checking the same thing. So of course, Buddhist counseling and other kinds of psychotherapy, I would think family background upbringing are very important. So when I asked about her family, she said her parents have a conflictual relationship due to her father's suspected affair, and Mayan described her father as a distant and reserved person who was absent quite a lot since she was young. Her mother is a highly critical and anxious person who attempted to control everything. As a single child at home, she took up a role of mediator between her parents since she was young, and she was also a parentified child to take care of the family, especially her mother. Maybe like mainly because her father is not there all the time, so she born with her mother, but that relationship is very conflictual. There's so many things that she feel like she just want mother to be a little bit more calm, a little bit more accepting of her like a regular daughter, but she can never get it. So when I asked about, so what is your treatment goal? Well, she said it's nice to manage your anxiety. This is actually the first thing she should come in saying that, oh, I have this anxiety problem, I have some OCD, I want to get some treatment. But maybe like 2-3 sessions into counseling, she started to say, well, what I actually really want is not about the OCD. I just want a normal relationship with my mother. And I was like, what do you mean by normal relationship? She's saying, oh, maybe when I go home, when I see my mother, we just chit chat, no fight, nothing about cleaning, nothing about what things I don't do well. Just talk, just chat, and have a reasonable, calm, and nice time. Oh, when I hear that, I actually feel pretty sad because it seems like to me, like she is a very competent, grown-up social worker, but inside her heart, there seems to be a little girl who just want the mother to be more caring, to be more accepting of her. Not to mention like, oh, my mother to love me a lot or do this or do that for me, but just chat with me, just connect with me. But she's not getting that. So to start with, the first step, like besides compassionate attunement that I talk about, it is assessment. So maybe some of us here may not be from a psychotherapy or counseling background. So I'll just talk about the essence of what is assessment. Assessment is a continual process of data collection. So when we get the data, we try to explore and understand what are the conditions related to client suffering. So basically, what is going on? What is going on in the environment, in the different systems, at work, socially, relationship with family, and inside client's mind? What may be some of the values, some of the events, so that it all add up together to create a suffering. So assessment is basically a process of exploration, of knowing what actually happened to client. Okay, so assessment, I apply the very important Buddhist concept called dependent co-arising. So condition. In Buddhism, we believe that everything happened that has to rely on different kind of courses and conditions. I don't know if any one of you played Jenga in the past, Jenga. So if you have Jenga, there will be a Jenga tower, right? So my metaphor is that every condition is like a Jenga block. Every phenomenon is like a Jenga tower. Even though when you look at a tower, you see a tower. But basically, if you see what is inside, just piece of condition. Just like flowers, right? You need sunlight, you need soil, you need air, you need nutrients. Just like an oil lamp in traditional Buddhist scriptures, you need a stinky that connect. You need fire, you need oil, you need a wick, like all those kind of things. So same thing as our experiences, just like Jenga tower. When all things are put tightly into a certain kind of phenomenon that you perceive as a tower, you don't understand this is actually based on all the different conditions. So if each one block is a condition, so our job should be conceptually pretty easy, right? We just try to assess, like, what are the different conditions that make up this Jenga tower? When we know, oh, this is how your mother treat you, how your father treat you, your work stress, oh, you don't have a good diet, you don't have exercise. When you see all that, then we can see out of all the conditions that sustain your suffering, what are the changeable one? When we move the changeable one, then the whole tower collapses. Then the subjective feeling of depression, of anxiety, of any kind of suffering will be reduced or even liberated if we are able to remove certain kind of conditions. Okay, put it in a realistic way. So, Mayan, assuming that the phenomenon is anxiety, so the way that I think about conditions are twofold. One is certain kind of internal conditions, meaning that what happened in one's mind. Another one is external conditions. Of course, this is in mind and other things outside of the mind. And we would like start with the basis one. For example, realistically, in her environment, there are things that if she's just a normal person, she will feel very anxious about, such as being a social worker. Like being a social worker by itself is a very anxious thing. All the social worker friends that I have, they have such like enormous amount of work that I don't know how people can handle. Just being a social worker, this condition is tough already. Critical mother, father not very present all the time. And at that time when I saw her, the stress of the pandemic, worrying of getting COVID, and in her body, she doesn't do a lot of exercises, not having good diet, and sometimes she get out work really late and would eat something like very unhealthy. And genes like her mother actually was born with a lot of anxiety, and then she often find her body have a lot of like pain, like worries causing like heat and tightness. So outside of her mind, a lot of things are happening already, right? And inside her mind, she has a lot of doubts about herself when she doesn't do things well, and when her parents have fight, she has a lot of guilt, and she clings on to being perfect, which I will explain a little bit more. She wants things to be perfect. She wants herself to be perfect, and in order to be perfect, she tries to control all the things, and she craves for love. How her mother doesn't really accept her. Actually, she's yearning for love from her mother, and all the things that add together to be this anxiety. So thinking about that, like one very important implication is when we talk to our client, it's just very easy to get persuaded by the client that there's only one reason. And I can tell you that reason. I'm anxious because my mother is highly critical. I'm depressed because my wife dumped me. Or like, I'm so angry because my boss is a jerk or something like that. When my clinical experiences, clients are very smart in a way that they will try to sort out, they will try to theorize, they will try to make pattern. And when they come to see us, they will just give you the conclusion. But most of the time, from my experience, if we just go along with the conclusion, it's just going into a ruminative loop and not getting anywhere. But when we see, okay, that's one of the possibility, but let's step back. Let's go from like your past to present, your environment, how you think, how you perceive things. Then when we expand all those kind of possible factors, just like this graph, then you will see, wow, there are actually some of the things that she can try in her body, in her environment, or in her mind, that maybe she would not suffer as much level of anxiety. So conceptually, it's very easy, just like that. So one step to practicality, I do make a counseling assessment form, and those are some of the things that I would assess, like externally on our right, like their family, interconnectedness, their social relationship, their body, their physical health. Like one thing that I think when I was early as a therapist or psychologist, I did not quite see the importance of physical health and its influence to the mental health. And but basically I'm getting older and I see that, oh, actually my body is getting weaker and slower. So, oh, that makes me upset. So from my first person realization, I realized the importance of physical health. And other things are environment. It's like, say like finance, like if they're too worried about money, like it's very hard, difficult to be happy, like culture, education, and work. Those are some of the things that if you're in psychology, in counseling, like you would be trained to assess. But internal condition are certain kind of like mind state, certain kind of thoughts, certain kind of way of seeing things, thinking about things. So one important thing is how people suffer. Oh, okay, anxiety. If we look at the DSM, if we look at ICD-10, of course they tell you this is a certain kind of anxiety disorder and those are the symptoms. But the truth is, we are all unique people. Buddhism believes that we are all inside what we call a five aggregate, that we do not actually have a direct contact with other people outside world, meaning that we are all special and unique and specific. To understand what anxiety means to me and to you, the only way is to ask the person, observe the person, be with the person. Do not let our assumptions or existing knowledge of the book or DSM or classification to blind you. Just know that even though we label the same thing, but our meaning of the label is different. And besides that, how they cling on to that self-notion, their identity, how they perceive things, their values, what kind of common mind states, like are they usually like having a greed, like really want things, or hatred, they tend to resisting or deluded, like not having awareness of what they are doing, or what things that deep inside they have a deep desire to have. I want people to acknowledge me. I want people to respect me. Or like based on those kind of needs, what do they try to do to compensate, to meet their needs that are usually making suffer? And on the other side, are there other things that they actually do as a good coping mechanism, good resources that help them suffer less? Like those are the important things to know. And of course, some other things are common assessment that we need to do. Do they have a suicidal risk, any abuse and trauma, or any other risk factors? So if you're interested, later I can share the form that I developed with you, or like if you can want to buy my book, then I also have it there. But those are the things that I would assess. But do it in a more like a technique intervention way. That this is one of the things that I would try to do with my client. So you see that this is a pretty simple graph, but inside like this is how people suffer. We write down suffering. And then I would try to work with them to use post notes and talk about like what are the things that you think contribute to your suffering externally, like in your environment, your work, your social relationships, like something that not inside yourself, something that outside of you. And then internally, like what kind of like common thoughts or what kind of things that you always want that make you suffer? That was deeper, like depending on client's level. If not, just talk about all the things that they think would happen. And then I talk about unfavorable condition, meaning that they'll aggregate the suffering. After that, we talk about the other side. Like, what are the things that you actually think are protective of you? What are the things that you relied on, some people you trust, or some good things that happen to you? And use post note to write it down. So after having all that, then have client have a moment to have a visually, cognitively understanding view of, those are the things that is happening. After that, there are many things that we can do. First, this is part of the assessment to help us understand how clients see things and what things happen to them. This is actually, I would say, a little therapeutic already. The second thing is we can talk about what are the conditions that can be changed? What are the conditions that cannot be changed? And can we cultivate more acceptance to the unchangeable one and try to think about how to change more skillfully the changeable ones? That will be a very important intervention across the Buddhist counseling model. Well, speaking of changing things and not changing things, I need to introduce another very important Buddhist concept, which is called the two arrows from the Two Arrow Sutta. So in ancient time, when a Buddha taught suffering, basically he meant that one way to classify suffering is some of the suffering are just there, unchangeable. Some of the suffering, in contrast, is changeable. The metaphor he gave is that imagine you get an arrow stabbed in you. So you have two choices. Choice one, wow, it is very painful. I don't like it. I hate it. Like, what is the arrow made of? What is the poisons about? Like, why do people stab me? Like, I didn't do anything wrong. Keep on ruminating, thinking, proliferating on like what actually happened. Or the second choice is you can think about how can I pull away the arrow instead of just ruminating over that. Well, you'll find it kind of silly, right? Every person would try to every person would try to take away the arrow instead of thinking about, what is this arrow made of? Why is it so painful? Is it about angle? Is it about strength and all that? In reality, most of us do not take away the arrow. So, like I said, dukkha, first noble truth, all of us have an arrow here already. But our response to it would be, we try to resist it, we don't like it, we just ruminate over it. And what happens is that it will aggregate our arrow. It will make us suffer more because we do not accept the suffering. We reject the suffering, we deny the suffering and add more to our own suffering to that so that it becomes worse. And maybe I'll give you a live example. You know that I was in the United States for a long time, and before the pandemic, I fly back to the United States quite often to do like training or do presentation. And I remember there was a time that I flew to Los Angeles and I took a local flight to go to Washington, D.C. for APA conference. And on the aircraft, I was sitting closest to the window, and there were two gentlemen sitting close to me. Both of them, one of them was African American, one of them was Caucasian. So there was a guy like doing the cart thing, you know what flight attendant do, right? Flight attendant will ask you what we like to drink or chicken or beef, something like that. So when the guy go to our row, the guy asks the gentleman next to me, oh, what would you like to drink? A Sprite. And then the next gentleman, what would you like to drink? I want Coke. And somehow, when the guide have eye contact with me, seeing this Asian face, the guy did not say anything, just look a little awkward and do the hand gesture. I guess it means that what we like to drink, but it's not even in sign language, but in a gesture instead of asking me. So my feeling was that he think because of this Asian face, I do not speak English or not as well as the Caucasian African American next to me. So what happened in my mind? I didn't act or say, I didn't do anything weird, but in my mind was like, how dare you think that I don't speak English? I'm an assistant professor. You know, like how hard I try to speak English and be competent so that I can fend off my strong feeling of inferiority, right? And now, like how humiliating I've done a whole aircraft. I'm the only one that you think I don't speak English and have to use a hand gesture to ask me what will I drink. Going on and on, ruminating and ruminating about that, but I just looked very calm and said, I would like some orange juice, please, like something like that. So is it a first arrow or second arrow? So first arrow is what happened already that you cannot change. Things happen out of your control, like having cancer, having a strong resentment towards a spouse or a highly critical mother, or a flight attendant showing you the gesture of whether you want to drink. But second arrow are all the proliferations or rumination in my mind that step myself with a lot more arrows. Being angry, guessing like it was the intention of humiliating me, holding on to the perception of humiliation, and ruminating on the past and all the people humiliated me, and again, it makes me suffer more and more. So the second arrows are those add-ons, are those kind of things that are not there, not in reality. But in our mind, based on how we see things, based on our reality, it just aggregates our suffering a lot more. And the trick is, or the goal of practice is, come back to the first arrow. If we come back to reality, or if I was able to go back to reality, what would I see? It was only a flight attendant using that gesture to ask me what I want to drink, right? That's it, period. That's the end of things. And same thing that, I mean, like, it may be a silly example, but same thing that happened to us all the time. Think about the last time you get angry. Think about the last time you had a fight. Think about the last time that you were anxious or depressed about something. If we can go back in time to think about at that moment, what was the reality before interpretation? If we can just take the reality as it is, then we actually don't have to suffer that much. So this is a very important sutta in Buddhism that taught us about in different situations, when we feel angry, when we feel suffering, what would be the way to come back to the first arrow instead of giving rise to the second arrows? Okay, so for that, I also developed a form in doing something like that. And of course, it's a little bit more difficult that we need to use a simple way to explain to clients like what actually are first and second arrow. But from my experiences doing Buddhist counseling, like most clients are actually pretty smart. They can understand it pretty well. So what I do is that I do a quadrant, first arrow, and controllable things. What I try to do is, in our mind, there are some things that is very hard to control. It has happened already. Like all of us have tried to have some emotional disturbances, right? We have been depressed, we have been hurt, we have been angry in the past. And sometimes, even though we try really hard, we just cannot control that. That feeling just stay there and cannot mitigate no matter what we do. So uncontrollable event internally means that what are some of the very strong thoughts and emotions that are just there? And externally is what are the things that have happened already, like a critical boss, a really uncaring mother and all that. That's not something that we can change at this moment. We cannot change at this moment. And second arrows are when we have that kind of first layer of thoughts and emotions, what are the things that we actually do to make it worse? Such as when I'm angry, when I'm sad, maybe I blame myself for being angry. George, you develop Buddhist counseling, you teach like you should not be so angry. Like, shame on you. Why do you do that? Obviously, that are second arrows, right? It would just aggregate all the suffering. And externally, there's something that would just make things worse, like having a fight with people and then we being more aggressive, like, or other things that we try to not have compassion to other people, like that actually make things worse. So if we would put it into a diagram and work with clients, so this is what happened with Mayan. So say like first arrow, after she understood, oh, okay, at work, there's actually a lot of things that make me upset or anxious. And last time when I have a conversation with my boss, that's what happened. I just find that it is strong anxiety if I think that I make a mistake, I will screw things up. And at that time, like I was just have a strong urge to check documents again and again. And externally in my body, I feel like there's some heat and tightness in the chest and breathing is difficult. And externally, I know that deadline, every workload is not something I can change. And the boss doesn't really care about me, only care about the performance. And those are the first layer. Things that at this moment we cannot change yet. We're not capable in making it better yet. But second arrow is based on the things that have happened already. What things that will make it worse? Such as, well, when I thought that is a mistake, I keep on ruminating how it hurt people, it made me look bad, I will lose my job, I will be abandoned. And I keep on blaming myself, like, you should do better, you would know better, and worrying how people will discover my OCD. But another thing is, I have the urge to check the documents and allow myself to keep on checking and checking. I told myself I'm fine, but then I just want to check one more time. And one more time is 2 hours already. And then what I try to do to myself is that I actually tighten myself and force myself to focus. And I just think about whether I change the job or not work for some time. So picking one incident and divide that into those kind of ways help me to see, oh, wow, okay, maybe there are certain things I can control. Maybe there are certain things I cannot. And of course, in reality, when we work with our client, we need a lot more processing and exploration to maybe question, contemplate on, oh, is this something we can change? Okay, yes or no. If not, then okay, we cannot change it. But for the things that we can change, then what might be other things that we can do so that it open up more flexibilities? All we are doing is that when we are able to take all the burden in mind into a conceptually, visually easy to understand way, it instantly gives some relief and mental distance. So hopefully this training, this cultivation of mind is when they understand that, there are certain things that actually is controllable. And when it comes back to the same situation, then maybe I'll remind myself of I can do this or I cannot do that. Or even though I cannot make any change at this time, I'm fully mindful of the fact that at this moment, I chose to engage, I chose to feed my urge, but next moment it might be different. So all of them is to cultivate our mind to be more aware. Okay, so now we go to conceptualization. Like, how do we make sense of client suffering? All the theoretical orientation have different ways to understand why people suffer. And Buddhism has its own unique way. So, okay. I don't know your clinical experiences. I don't want to tell you. But I think one reason of why we suffer is we have a discrepancy between what we want and the reality. Such as like many people, actually many clients and many students share about their story. One thing that I found is that I expect my parents or my mother, my father to love me, accept me, and understand me unconditionally, right? But in reality, is many of them is she bullies me worse than anyone does. I know it sounds funny, right? Mother or father bully them, but this is actually one of the reality of many people. Easiest way to put Buddhism or to explain dukkha is what happened does not meet with our expectation. That gap is what causes our dissatisfaction or unsatisfactoriness, which is actually one of the definition of dukkha. Suffering means unsatisfactoriness. What we expect, what we think is right, what we want doesn't meet the reality. This is not the worst. What is the worst is that we try many ways to make it right according to our view. Okay, so this is more technical. This is a longer explanation of why people suffer in my way of like using a more simplistic way to present part of the Buddhist teaching. So if you look at suttas, if you look at Buddhism, especially early Buddhism, the reason why people suffer are basically two. One is craving, the tanha, a strong thirst, strong urge, like to get something. And second one is ignorance. Ignorance means, well, we don't know better. We don't know, like we're ignorant about the fact that how things working. I'm ignorant about the fact that this is not really me. Like things are impermanent. I think things are permanent. I think that, oh, in marriage, we just need to buy a diamond ring. Diamond ring represent permanence, so that my love will be permanent, like something like that. Like, don't tell me you never believe in it, okay? We want something and we don't know it would actually give us more suffering. Tanha, craving. Well, supposedly, in Buddhism, we believe that when we are born to this life, meaning that we want to be a person, we want to be a human being, we want to exist. So we were born with that kind of like craving or urge that we want to hold on to things. And the thing is, when your ego consciousness give birth to here, it cannot just exist by itself. Any kind of creation, any kind of configuration have to be based on certain kind of ontological support, some of the form, some of the matter to make it crystallize. You need to stand on something so that you can feel like I'm grasping onto something, right? With that strong energy coming to life, we have our childhood, we have our environment, we have our parents, we have our friends, our teachers, our community, our job, all of the things. So we are exposed to a lot of different things. When we have that urge, say like to exist, and we exposed to those kind of things, we will easily glue onto, hold onto those people, values, forms, money, whether you own a house, how much you make, whether you own a fancy car, those kind of things to create and sustain who we are. So basically, we create and recreate and sustain our identity based on all the things that we encounter. And then it gradually solidified and crystallized into a sense of self. This is who I am. When we have this is who I am, the self continue to want things. I want to be loved. I want to be acknowledged. I want to be accepted. This is I. This is just how I am. And those kind of clinging will become expectations in life. And reality will never disappoint you by disappoint you. Reality will always will not disappoint you by disappoint you. So whenever there's a discrepancy between reality and our expectation, there will be dukkha, suffering. And the worst thing is that because we don't know a better way, we keep on doing the same thing to get our needs met again and again, which actually make us suffer even more. Okay. So those are some of the more verbal description of like the model. So basically, craving, we have addition to who I am and I want to exist. With this strong craving, we grab on the things, just like, oh, this is George, I want to exist. And it feels nice to be in academia, to be a faculty member. So I cling on to the self-identity of I'm a respected lecturer who is very competent and highly recognized. Of course, it's not true, okay? Just this example, okay? And I expect all the students to pay high respect to me, acknowledge my work. But in reality, of course, like some students disrespected me. I feel so angry and I want to discipline the student and then show that I have the authority. And those are all the things that I cling on to it. I have to sustain my clinging to the self-image and do unskillful things. I thought that I would do better, but actually make it worse. So in order to understand those kind of diagram or the components of a client, I developed two ways of conceptualization. This graph is just to think about, just to conceptualize how someone developed their self-notion or identity. So I actually pinpoint 4 important domains. How the fathers like, how the mothers like, major events and environments. Of course, there are different situations. What if the child is grew up in a foster family, adopted, and all that? We can make changes to it. But for common situations, father's influence, mother's influence, and major events, those are the external events. And in the external events, we perceive them, we take them in a certain way that create a notion of self. And inside the notion of self, the deepest core is, what do I want? What do I really yearn for? So that actually gives rise to the middle part of the conceptualization diagram. Such as for Mei Yan, the father is a highly distant father. So what Mei Yan would perceive from a highly distant father usually would be, I'm not important. The father doesn't want me and want to have his own family elsewhere. I'm not that good. And the mother is highly critical and controlling. On one way, Mei Yan learns that, oh, maybe I'm incapable. I cannot take care of myself. But on the other way, like the mother is highly critical and controlling, also anxious. Maybe I should take care of her. So all that, like Mei Yan, develop a certain insecure, unwanted sense of self that feel that maybe my values to take care of them. When I take care of them, that I feel good about myself. So when it happens when she grew up, like other events in life include, okay, I get a chance to be a social worker. And especially in Hong Kong, social worker were trained that you are the savior of the world. Any difficult cases and difficult situations, you should be able to do that. So that actually fits with her mindset that when I grew up, my only value is that I try to be good and even take care of my family. That's the only time that I don't feel rejected. I feel less likely to be abandoned. So being a social worker fits me well. If I become a social worker, maybe part of me can feel that I can save my family. And maybe that would make me more worthy of love and they will be fine or not abandon me. So all that add up together become the notion of self. Of course, it can go much deeper and much more complicated, but the essence is like that. And another conceptual diagram is after we did a guide, the other part is putting it all together. So first of all, like what do someone crave for? For Mayan, it will be craving, seems like certain kind of existence. So we can verbally drop down a few notes of the self, who I am and what do I want? And in reality, what do I usually expect in people, but also in reality, what things that actually happen that create anxiety, that create different kind of suffering. And pattern is round and round, what are the cycle that I engage myself in that I thought would bring me happiness, but actually didn't work? And I'll give you an example of Mayan about that. Okay. So Mayan want existence, the role as a daughter, the role to be loved, the role like that I can be accepted. I want my mother to be there with me. I don't want her to abandon me or criticize me. And some of the things that she say to herself at heart is that I'm not good enough as my father did not want me, and my mother is never satisfied with me. I never know whether they will abandon me. When I become a good girl, it seems like they fight less and make me safer. I don't think I make mistakes as my experience told me it is unacceptable to be wrong. My mother is always anxious and she really would be really mean to me if I do anything wrong at home. There's no one else to protect me, so I need to work hard to protect myself as well as people I care. Probably, I need to exert more control to make sure things are fine. So in this kind of wording, like some of the things that she said and described is, she feels very insecure. She doesn't feel that she's secure enough, good enough that the parents like her, accept her. The parents are just too into their fights. And for her, when she mediate about the parents' relationship, when she take care of them, when she's being good, that's the only time that the parents feel more settled and pacified and maybe criticize her a little less. But in general, it doesn't make her feel that she's being accepted or appreciated the way she is. Many times, she just wants the home to be a more peaceful, safer place that she can chill, but she just doesn't have it. So that the strong sense of insecurity becomes anxiety to her, and her coping ways that I need to make sure things are fine. I need to try my best to make sure everything is okay. And you see that the quotation of I, this is an important way to point out that, yes, this is I, but this is just part of the identity or part of the self that we have created. It doesn't have to be forever and for everything. So when we put a quotation, we realize is that, okay, that's just one of the possibilities. When we step back, when we have a little bit distance or emptiness to who I am, we can create other possibilities. So one of the deep clinging that she wants is very simple. I want love and acceptance, especially from my mother. And in reality, what she wants in life are, well, I just want to go home and chit chat with my mother and we laugh, we watch TV, just have some normal conversation. But it's so hard. Every time when I don't get it, I'm so frustrated. I feel hurt. I feel like I don't get some little things that I deserve. And she will be very unhappy. So some of the things that happen in reality is not something that only client can tell us. This is something that we will try to contemplate, we will try to process and think about what might be the things that are actually happening. Well, one reality, we know that there are certain things in life that we can control. There are also many things in life that we cannot control. This is just what it is. No matter how much I try, there will still be mistakes. My mother is incapable of loving me the way I ever wanted. My mother can only love me the way she can. So those are some blunt reality. Mayan, and even for us, when we know the reality, our first intention is not to accept it. It should not be the way it is, right? My mother, my father should love me more. My boss should be more reasonable. COVID should be gone sooner. Or like last time when I flew to Japan, the flight doesn't have in-flight entertainment, and I've been having in-flight entertainment for 20 years in my life, and they should have it, and all those kind of should. just like CBD, all this kind of shit. But it's all about, can we accept reality as it is, acknowledge the part that we cannot, and see whether we can have more compassion to accept things, and also see what are the other things that we can change, instead of just grasping on the one thought, one perspective, and ruminating over that. So for Meiyan, knowing that those are her needs, those are who she is, she didn't realize she had been in a very common pattern with her mother. So usually, in a calm state, and once in a while, she would try many ways to approach her mother and connect with her. So maybe when she go home, she make late dinner for her mother. She sometimes will ask, "Oh, how are you doing? Should I go to a doctor or something like that?" When that happened, we don't know why, but many times it just becomes criticism from her mother, or her mother rejects her, or like when you wash dishes, it should not be like that. When you put things, it should be a certain way. And of course, her mother has also have some OCD. And well, I don't know why, like other girls that get married already, but then you are single. Like all those kind of criticism, almost like criticizing Meiyan is the only way that the mother knows how to connect with her, or else she doesn't know what to say. So from Meiyan's perspective, feel rejected, feel hurt and frustrated. And sometimes she will fight back, not physically, but talk back like, "Mom, like this is OCD, this is sickness, you should not do that, you should appreciate me more." So they have certain fights, but doesn't go anywhere. And then she will calm down, go to her room, have her time and distancing a little bit until next time she want to engage her mother. So in sessions, we try to draw out that cycle, take some examples to modify, and it feels like it's always like that. Always like she wants to be closer to her mother, but get rejected. And then she try again, but it doesn't work. So to know, one of the things in conceptualization is what actually happened. Okay, so the final part of our presentation is to talk about intervention. So now we have talked about assessment. What may be the things externally, internally that contribute or sustain suffering? And the know is, okay, deeper inside, all the things that happen. How do we make sense of that? What things that we are clinging on to? What things that innermost needs that make us suffer? And how do we keep on doing the same thing again and again? Thought that it will be better, thought that it would change reality, but it cannot. So finally, cultivation, mind cultivation. What else can we do under the conditions so that we can change? Well, to start with, I want you to think about what is the most important thing to you in counseling and psychotherapy. What do you think is the most important ingredient? For me, it took me a long time to realize that it's not about how smart we are, what great intervention that we know, or fancy techniques. It's a lot about the art of being with. And the art of being with comes from within. When we have different kind of emotions, different kind of suffering that arise, are we able to be with them, to turn toward it and accompany it, so that we can first have the compassion for ourselves, to soothe and love ourselves truly, before we can actually do it for our clients? Of course, if we are just intellectual, if we just use a logical way to talk to client, or think that, oh, we are better, you're worse, like part of it still work because there's still some wisdom, but it only gets us to somewhere that we cannot go further. I would believe in Buddhist counseling, in any kind of counseling, our own cultivation as a counselor, as a therapist, as a psychologist, come first. The more you understand and accept your own suffering, the more you can do it to contain and help people embrace themselves. So I don't know about you. I'm a pretty anxious person. Like, how many of you identify as anxious person? Some of us. Yeah, thank you. So those of us who are anxious, have you ever have a chance to tell your own anxiety that, hi, anxiety, I'm here for you. I will try to accept you the way you are, just like how I accept my loved ones. Try the best way that I can, because I know you are just part of me, a lovable part of me. It's not easy, right? And many times when I talk to students about that, they would keep talking about, oh, I'm so compassionate and loving for my parents, for my spouse, for my children. But when I ask, like, have you ever done it to yourself? Most of them would say, no, I don't deserve it, or I don't think it's right. I don't think I'm good enough to receive that kind of love and compassion. But if we resist it to ourselves, it will be so easy to resist it to our client. And if the client cannot internalize a role model who can be self-compassionate, they cannot really be self-compassionate to themselves. Sometimes, yes, sometimes most of the time they were actually learning from who we are. Just like when you're a teacher, when you're a psychologist, when you're a parent, people many times do not take what you say, but who you are, how you do things, how you treat yourself and other people as the most powerful role model. So I hope that all of us, like if you forget anything today, try to embrace yourself and have self-compassion for yourself the best that you can, because that will be your most powerful intervention for your client. Okay. So coming back all those kind of boring intellectual thing, okay. Buddhism, when we talk about intervention, when we are even for the Fourth Noble Truth, the Eightfold Path, we can be divided into three important components, including concentration, wisdom, and discipline. Well, discipline, usually we start with this one because when you, like in a religious settings, when you become a Buddhist, you need to take vows, take precepts of what are the things that you should not do. When you limit yourself of not doing something, it's not for the sake of limitation or restrictions. It's the sake of how, when we stop something unskillful, it will give us more tranquility of mind, giving better karma and better relationship with others, such as not stealing, not lying, not yelling at someone, or like not killing, those kind of things. Concentration will be more like, or a little similar to mindfulness. Are there ways that we can practice, cultivate to calm our mind so that our mind become more clear, become more stable, and we have more distance to see how different thoughts or emotions arise, change, and cease without clinging on them. Wisdom will be the analysis. How do we see, oh, those are the internal factors, those are the external factors, like what I want as my unskillful patterns, all those kind of things come up to create problem. So the three of them, the threefold, is the core of the Buddhist teaching. And the way that I make it into a counseling model is no choose, in kind of like a action term, so that it can remind myself when I'm doing counseling, like which stage I'm in and what things I can do. So to introduce this model, I will give a simple example. So now we have been here for more than an hour, right? Okay. Have you been aware of how you are sitting? If I would invite you to just pay attention to your shoulders at this moment, what do you notice? And even though I don't see most of you, when I said it, I guess some of you actually move a little bit of your shoulders or change your sitting posture, right? Why? What just happened in the last few seconds that make you do that? So if I would slow down and guess what happened to you, it would be like, first, when I said something, I was directing your mind back to your body. When I direct your mind back to your body, your attention focus onto your body. So note is to be aware. You start to be aware of what actually happened in my body now, including, oh, is there any tightness? Is there any discomfort? So you observe, you pay attention to observe. The no is, the reason why I have the tightness is because I've been in this position for too long. Or like my sitting posture is actually not very conducive to me. That's why it hurt a little bit. I know this is the reason. And choose is, so knowing that it is suffering, I choose to sit differently to make myself more comfortable. Okay? So it's just in a few seconds, or even in 1 second, I notice something, I note something. I know this is the reason, so I choose something else. No choose is simply just like that. Okay, then you will think, this simple model, how can we apply into counseling? Counseling is a very complicated process, right? Or sometimes it can be. Okay, all the different components, they represent part of the practice, and it can be applied in one moment or a really huge path of cultivation. And all start with noting the awareness. When we start to notice something, then we can train our mind to be more concentrated, to see what are the causes and conditions. When we see the causes and conditions, such as those are the things that I cannot change, those are the things I can change. So do I choose to accept more? Do I choose to have more compassion? Do I choose to change something so that it would be better? But it's not the end. It's a circular process, meaning that after I choose something, I continue to observe. I know this is how it is, so I continue to choose. So every round and round and round, no choose, no choose. Then I can cultivate my so-called karma to a more wholesome direction, so that I don't engage in the same way of suffering again and again. Well, I don't know, like, how many of you practice mindfulness here? Anyone practice mindfulness or meditation here? Okay, good. So when we practice mindfulness, meditation, it's the same rationale. Remember the first time that when you close your eyes and take a breath, you may actually not realizing much. But when you start to note, this is my breath, this is the in and out, then you start to analyze, how do I see it? How do I pay attention? How do I tighten or loosen certain kind of muscles can help me be more equanimous? When I know that, I choose to continue to sit in certain way, or think or not think in certain way, and observe and note whether it's better. So I keep on doing that again and again. So with that kind of no choose mindset, then bit by bit, you will realize it's easier for me to focus. It's easier for me to do a mindful breath, to come back to the present moment. So this is the mind cultivation. When we keep on doing that, bit by bit, we are training our mind to be a more skillful, more wholesome state. And then that will be what we call emptiness. Okay, starting from note. Well, to train our mind to be calm and stable is not just that, okay? Just like our secular use of mindfulness, mainly to calm and stabilize our mind, to cope with stress or other symptoms, but this is not just that. We train our mind, just like when you go to the gym, you train your muscles. You don't just want to look good. You want to use the muscle to do something good, right? Usually, training our mind to be calm and stable, it is for the sake of using it to observe and understand different things. And there are three important components in that. Recentering. Can we recenter our mind in the present moment? When a client coming to us, just like Meiyan, so anxious, so much doubt, so many things that she cannot do and feel like she should be doing, or ruminating about a boss and mother, having something strong and capture the mind and sustainably be there, focusing on her breath, a yoga movement or something, so that her mind can take a break from all other things and come back to the present moment and be grounded, anchored there. That's recentering. After that, it's not just that, but regularly develop a habit so that she can continue to sustain attention to some objects and become a practice. And then train the mind when that tranquility is there. Observe, what am I doing now? How is my body feeling like? Where do I place my hand and shoulders? When I eat, for example, how does it feel like? What is the taste? How do I choose my food? Bit by bit is a strong cultivation of mind, so that that stronger mind, when she engages in anxiety or conflict with mother, it would be almost like another set of mind is overseeing what is going on, so that that newer, more stable, calmer, clear set of mind can help her make a new decision. So this is note. Well, Besides that, I just want to add a little bit, sidetrack a little bit. I think in counseling, it's basically just about how to live a better life. Part of that is about how to live a better life. And I don't know for you, for the people, very high achieving people I met, not all of us know how to live a good life. So I kind of write down like acronym a CARE model, like what is a good life like? The first thing is that compassion for yourself. Like knowing, accept that sometimes we are tired, we have a lot on our shoulders, and resting is very helpful. So if we are truly compassionate to ourselves, like sometimes we will just let ourselves go. Be okay with ourselves, be satisfied, and don't be so harsh on ourselves or let ourselves rest. A is for activity. All of the people, all of us, if we want a good life, one basic is we need to choose at least one or two activities that we enjoy doing, bring us some peace, not too hard or difficult. Like positive psychology said, some flow, right? But some of the activities are also importantly, equally important including, do we have a healthy diet, eating food that we need and we like? We need and we like, okay? It's not like having a cheesecake factory for the whole week. I mean, like we need and we like having a balance. Sleep well. Are there ways that we can do different things to allow ourselves to sleep better and get some sunlight? And then doing the activity and exercises, like when I said about Buddhist Four Noble Truths, this is a mundane wing Four Noble Truth. Eat well, sleep well, get some light, and do some exercises. Those are very important. And relaxation. Are there times in our life that here and there we can just chill and relax? While like we are doing the activity, we can fully attend to it and be able to observe our body and mind in it, such as drawing, painting, calligraphy, mindful breathing, jogging, or doing some other things that give yourself some relaxation, not just entertainment. Well, you know, some people maybe Netflix or like in the past, like Squid Game, like non-stop marathon, or watching sitcom or something. But those are fun, or like some people like eating spicy hot pot, right? Or barbecue food or something like that. Fun, but it may actually make you more exhausted. So what our mind need, what our body need is that just relaxing peacefully so that it can use the room, the space to flourish oneself. This is what we need. And environment, like physically, is there any chance in a day that we can designate a physical space, a time, and a mental room that no one can disturb us? We can just be there, or sometimes going to the nature, or walking in a park, and doing something like a few minutes is good enough. So I think this is a four basics, like care model for anyone to live a reasonably better life. And of course, all the things I talk about, you'll be like, well, and of course I know that, like I'm a smart person, I'm a psychologist, a counselor at school. Of course I know that. Okay, we all know that. But the truth is, how many of us here do all of them regularly? Please raise your hand. Raise your hand, leave me, like if you do it all regularly, it's not just raise your hand, okay? If you are not lying, do it regularly, give me your email. I will ship you one free book as a gift and respect for you, okay? 2 people, okay. Ben, please take down their name. Wait, is it really true? Is it really true? Like, why don't all 90 people raise your hand? Okay, okay, don't lie, okay? I'll do a promotion. Okay, 10 is enough. I don't have enough money. 10 is enough, okay? Hey, take down their email and address, okay? Thank you. So this is very important, and I hope that all of you are reasonably happy. Okay, so coming back to the model, to note, like sometimes like teaching client mindfulness, it's not very easy. So one of the easier way that I try to teach mindfulness is to use the 3 B's model, like body, breath, and brain. Body, breath, and brain. My way of defining mindfulness is recentering mind at the present moment, right? But that kind of psychological state is actually a more balanced, concentrated mind, meaning that your body is sitting in a balanced way, that you don't need much strength to sustain the body. You are using, in fact, the minimal strength to be settled in a posture. Your breath, Your breath is more tricky. The more you control it, the more it is actually less relaxed. More control, less relaxed. So the breath, if you want it to be balanced, a good way will be let it be. Follow the breath. Observe and accept the way it is. But sometimes if you're too stimulated, it will help to purposefully slow it down, go deeper for a little bit, and then follow it again. Do not try to manipulate the whole time in a Buddhist sense, okay? If you're doing like other kind of practice, it may be different. Brain, also another difficult one. Brain, a lot of times it needs some mental reminder. Sometimes maybe you have different thoughts, different worries, urges that bombard your mind. But what you need to tell yourself is that, okay, I know that this time is a mindfulness practice, even though my body and mind may not be peaceful, but I will try to relax it. I will try to remind myself that the mind can be peaceful. I'm being with it, just observing it. Certain kind of almost like mantra or reminder, then you can try to relax the mind. And sometimes same thing as a breath. Maybe visualizing something peaceful could help sometimes, but for me, I usually don't do that. I try to sit back, ground in the present moment, and see how things go, come and go, and slowly become balanced. So when we do that, it will become an inner peace. And sometimes I'll print it out and show client, explain to that, and do some practice with them together and see how it feels. Body, brain, and breath. Of course, if you're a Buddhist, you will say like brain doesn't really represent mind, but I mean skillful means, right? We need to talk to people who may not be Buddhist. That brain will be easier to understand. You can see how neuroscience have such a blossom doing all the Buddhist research. And because one reason is because people are interested in the brain. Brain looks, sounds more, oh, so chic, like so scientific. And mind is like, oh, so spiritual. So skillful means basically brain, I means mind. And to note basically is using one of the six senses. Buddhism has six senses, okay? Ears, eyes, nose, tongue, your body and mind. If you can focus sustainably in one of the sense, actively engaging in one exercises, then you should be able to ground your mind there. Just like drawing, calligraphy, copying sutras, or like just now listening to the singing bowl, or smelling tea, smelling scents, or tea meditation, or walking meditation. Mine is more tricky, like compassion meditation, or like doing like counting breath. When you say in, out, or 1, 2, what you're doing is, I'm not physically saying it out, but counting in your mind. 1, 2, you're synchronizing your mind with the breath, synchronizing body and mind, so that your mind will not be distracted by other things because your number override that. So all of them, it really depends on, first, your experiences with all those kind of mindfulness practice. What resonates with you, what you find helpful, and what you gain of the insights from doing that. Second, working with client to see what may resonate with them. Some clients may be more religious. They actually like religious chanting or copying suttas. But some of them like, no, I don't like it. Then you may develop something in their life, especially for any kind of mindfulness practice. I think starting with something that people find some joy or interest in. Like joy is a very important factor. How many of you would think that doing mindful breathing is such a boring thing? No? Okay, you guys are very good, very cultivated, okay? But I think most of the people at the beginning may find that kind of, so boring, like something like that, right? So if you can help people realize in those kind of mindfulness practice, there's certain kind of reinforcement, joy or peace, like those two top reinforcement, that would be great. Just like if you slow down and take a deep breath now, you can feel that in the nostril. There's some kind of a some kind of joyful, peaceful, relaxing and relieving feeling, and focus there. And same as other thing, planting, snacking, focus on the peaceful joy and use that to ground the mind, and it can slowly extend the focus and be more willing to sustain attention into the same activity. So this is the mindfulness. Okay, so going back for Mei-Yan. I don't know, like for some of us, we are counselors and therapists, right? Is it difficult to teach people mindful breathing? I think it can be pretty difficult, especially when people close their eyes, you actually don't know what's going on. And working with Mei-Yan, one thing is that she has too much bombarding, hot, like charging thoughts in her mind that she cannot really be peaceful. She has a lot of doubts. Like, what am I doing? Should I be doing this? And then am I doing it right? Maybe I'm not doing it right, those kind of things. So one thing that I try to do is to do some physical exercises with her. 八段锦. 八段锦 is from Chinese culture. 八段锦 is kind of like different, a little bit like Tai Chi, but a simplified version of Tai Chi. When you do breathing with those kind of exercises, there are social science research which prove that it reduces anxiety and depression and increases your sleep quality. What we are saying is that for 1 week altogether, you do like 30 to 60 minutes of those kind of balancing, but then in a more open area with sunshine and all that, it has that kind of a therapeutic effect. So what I did with Mei-Yan was that we all did balancing together in a session room. And then after she get calmed down, then she did some mindful breathing. When she did some mindful breathing, sometimes work, sometimes not. And then what I realized is that if I just ask her, don't care about all those kind of things, don't care about all the things I say, just relax and breathe. And suddenly, she will become so much better. So what I want her to do is not to do a hardcore Buddhist meditation. I want her to notice that she can allow herself to relax. She can do something and totally allow herself to relax and build a mindful haven where she can rest. She can replenish some energy. So this is one of the most important thing in early session. And I think some of you know what is Badanjing, right? So the bear I'm showing is the first form of Badanjing. So basically, if you want, you can do with me together. So usually standing, but now we're all sitting, it's okay. It's mainly in the upper body. When you see that, relax a little bit of your muscles and take a little breath and relax. So to start with, your hand go like that near your belly. When you breathe in, go up, flip the hand, stretch all the way to the top, and breathe out, going down like that. So let me show you one more time, and we can do it together. You can use your own pace. Breathing in, breathing out. So something like that. So in session with Mei-Yan, we did a few of them, and especially when she cannot focus, and I found some YouTube clip for her to try at home, and then she found it pretty helpful. And it's one of the first time that she realizes she can actually do something to control the anxiety. Like I said, right? What is changeable? What is unchangeable? She first time realizes that part of the anxiety is actually changeable. When I do movement like that, when I breathe like that, or don't force myself like that. I think it's one of the first times she learned that I don't have to force myself. And it's a good feeling. And besides that, she also do two things at home, like the care model, right? She started to learn regular yoga and have some me time at home that she doesn't, she tried to not feed into the urge to engage or connect with her mother. Just spend some time in her room and do her own thing and try not to care about what happened outside the living room. So those are some of the protective mechanisms that help her do better. So no is a very complicated concept. Just now we were talking about all the craving, all the clinging, all that, right? So if I would summarize, one of the most important things that we want to know is we turn toward into deep inside our hearts. Like, what is this that I really cling on to, I really want? What are the things I yearn for? What do I want? This is the most important thing that I think we need to know. because many times our suffering comes from what I want and I don't get. So being totally honest, turning towards and accepting, maybe because the things I want is from a wounded inner child that I never got, or from some kind of trauma, some kind of things that I heard, or some basic needs that I want from my parents. But many times we may not really hear what our heart is saying. Knowing is to try to peel off, let go of all the defenses and worries, and be able to know what is it in our clients. But of course, for that, they have to trust us. They have to feel very safe in the environment before we can do it. Okay, so now like 3 reminders, deconstructions. For all the things that happen, deconstruct, like taking away all the experiences, just like Jenga, to know, those are the things that is happening. Detachment is when people ground their mind, when they observe what is it inside their inner self, inner child, like what are the things that are the urges, the emotions, the yearnings, but I see it now without feeding into it. And discernment is when we talk, when we contemplate, then we want to dig out, we want to reveal what will be the self-notion and yearnings. Okay, just talking about that is not talking about nothing because no one knows what I'm talking about, right? So I will do some graphical way. So basically, I see non-self, even though it's a true end goal, but from the very beginning, like there are different layers of insight that we try to get, and not all clients need to get all layers of insights. No one have to just reach non-self to end treatment. Depending on whether they feel like they are liberated from the immediate suffering, then they can go. Very early, that one thing we are notice of, and especially when clients choose to see you, there must be some kind of emotional or behavioral problems that triggers that make them suffer. And the second layer is that we talk to them and try to find out, are there any relational patterns with different people but repeating same theme? And then under the pattern, maybe there are certain personal habits, meaning that they are habitually thinking, saying things, or like perceiving things, or doing things in a certain way that engage them into those patterns. And beneath that, it must be some needs and drive. And needs and drive will be the very important thing already. Like, what do I need? What are the drive to continue those kind of relationship or get things met? And a deeper one is, all the needs is because I cling on to, I fabricated, and I want to feel myself as like that, finally letting go of that. But doing this and drive, I think would be the most important thing for no. Okay. So again, this is the unskillful pattern of Mei Yan, right? Those are the behavioral pattern from what drive her into engaging, into being rejected and anxious again and again. So one of the core need with her is, I just want to connect with you. I just want more connection with my mother. I just want to feel that I can be safe. I'm okay with you. I'm not being rejected. I'm not being abandoned. I want to feel a little bit love from our regular interaction, with laughter, with some joys, being together. That's what I need. So let me introduce you 2 exercises that I help clients to review what may be the self-notion and clinging. So what I try to do is, all the exercises that I created, they are reasonably simple because I'm not a very good artist. At the same time, I would like to create something that any of us can work. It's very similar to a psychology exercise. So basically, we may not have time to do it together, but I'll explain to you. Basically, you just need a piece of paper and flow it into this shape, like that. And then there are different layers, right? What I asked Mei Yan to do is, on the outer layer, I want to say, I invited her to draw out and express, how do people see you? How people see me? So on the outside, she was drawing like how she's usually perceived by people in the comments that she gets. Basically, she drew something like that. A very serious lady that very capable and competent. Okay, good. Okay. So, and then what I would like you to do is turn to the back of the paper and draw out like how you wish to be seen by people. How I wish to be seen by people is like, all of us have created certain image that we want to be seen by people, But behind people's back, we have a lot of sacrifices, a lot of hard work. It's like, what things that I have done to make people see me in the way that I wish to be seen? What things I've done to make people see that the way I wish to be seen? And it's something like that. So even though she was seen as a professional, competent woman, but in the back, sometimes she is just very, very anxious and doesn't know what to do. And then I guess you can guess what is it inside the core of this drawing, which is how I really am. If I can let go of all the packages, all the emotional suffering, all the things that I carry on my shoulders that people expect of me, that I feel obligated to fulfill. If I let go of all that, let down of all that, what would that be? And she drew something very, very different. She drew something like that. This is a cartoon character that I think when I was very young, it was kind of famous. Like this main character is always like very chill, very slow, and very cute. And he always just sit there, do nothing. And this is exactly what she wants. She said, if I don't need to care what other people think of me, I don't need to care about my parents or the expectation. I just want to be there, chill out and relax and laugh and be silly. I don't have to play the role of that competent, responsible social worker. I can just be a little girl and smile and laugh and do silly things. So that part is a very interesting experience already. She didn't really express that part to me at the beginning because she has always come across as friendly, mature, competent, but didn't know that, there's just a very joyful girl inside. Okay, but this is not the end of this exercise. We were talking about detachment, right? We're talking about giving mental distance. So first, we try to deconstruct, what may be different part of self? This is what you cling on to. But to detach from it, to know how it's like detach from it, I did another part of the exercise. I invited her to let me hold this paper representing her. I want her to imagine you have never met this person in your life. It's like take a moment to forget about this person. And when you close your eyes, think about you have not met this person. When you open your eyes again, I will introduce a new friend to you that you have never met. As you do not know anything about this person, you may be curious about the inner world. So I will introduce her to you. And then I'll have her open her eyes and reiterate her story. Hi there, you have not met Miss M, so I want to tell you more about this person. And one of these was narrate her past, including all sides of her story. How she have so many struggles, try to be seen as a competent person. How she actually just won the love from her parents, especially from her mother. All the things she sacrificed, all the suffering people cannot see, or she doesn't let people to see. But in the end, inside her heart, she's just a simple girl who just want to relax. So I try to narrate the whole story to her. And her response was magical. She cried and said, well, I think I'm just normal. I think I'm just normal. So it was a magical moment in our counseling process because for the whole time, she has been labeling herself as I'm anxious, I'm OCD, I'm this and that. I don't have a healthy family background. Yes, I do well work, but I don't think I'm normal. But at that moment, she was able to have mental distance, detachedly see herself as really someone else. And she saw who I am is just a normal girl having normal needs. And then I did a little bit more of conversing with this self. Like, what do you want to say to her? What do you want to do with her? First, you say that, yeah, I would definitely want to be friends with this person. And what I want to say to her is, relax, you're fine, girl, you're okay. That actually has a pretty important intrinsic change in her. Another exercise I want to introduce to you is, just to let you know, it is another way to help client contemplate of so-called non-self. It's kind of similar, but I didn't do with Mayan, but I want to tell you about it. What I do with clients that I have them draw kind of like a stick figure to represent themselves, but it's empty inside. And then I prepare a post note to have them think about what are the components, like what are the things that you think it makes you up or how people say it about you. Usually I will differentiate to, okay, so what people have been saying about you, use the post note and stick it from the outside. And after that, inside, write about what do you think of yourself, what labels do you put on yourself and stick inside. After that, I let client take a moment to look at, this makes up who I am, and ask them whether they want to mindfully take off some of them and let go. Take off one and let go, take off one and let go. And then I ask them, well, as this is a game, like when there is any emptiness, there's possibility, right? So if you would add some label to yourself, to this person, what will you do? And the clients will write something and I'll write something and add on. So I have them contemplate and think about, now you have this new person. How do you feel? Usually they feel better, but that's not it. After that, I ask them, maybe ask them if they want to take a picture. And then I ask them to mindfully take off the sticker one by one, with respect, acknowledge each one of them one by one aside, and look at the piece of paper again and contemplate, how does it feel like to be empty of label? What if I'm just empty? Nothing actually has to define me. I don't have to be defined by any kind of things or label. Have them contemplate for a minute and talk to them about that. And then I will let them decide what to do with the labels. Many times they don't want to bring it with them. They will just leave it with me. Like this is how counseling are like, right? We take money and then they give us all the burden and they go away, right? I mean, this is part of our job. But this exercise can be also very powerful in helping people realize what may be emptiness. Finally, last part of my presentation, choosing. Choosing is to think about, in different situations, what would be the most skillful thing to do. So there are three components. Like when I work with client, after no, go back to daily life, pick something that happened. When there's some incident that happened, I have them slow down to talk about what happened, like what happened before, what were you thinking, how was your body, how do you feel, and how do you react, and see where there are any choice points in any kind of pattern. And pause there and talk about, okay, at that time, yes, you feel rejected, but what was the reality? Just like the story I told you, okay, at that time, I feel really angry to be disrespected and I was perceived as not knowing any English, but what was the reality? Okay, the reality was a flight attendant using a hand gesture. Okay, at that time, what might be other choices? And after contemplating on the possibilities, developing some skillful choices, what are the new things of seeing things? What are other ways of thinking? What are the other things that we can do so that we can internally and externally do some changes, including be more accepting? Well, choices. If I would summarize all the choices that we can make in any kind of moment, I would summarize 5 choices. First is pursue, to fight for something, to change something, to negotiate so that we can get our needs met. Such as, I don't know if you have a relationship. There are times that you fight because you want a person to change. Keep on like, oh, do this, do that, or not talk to the person because you want a person to change. And then usually after so many years of marriage or like a relationship realizes that, really? People do not change? I cannot change my wife, my husband? Really? But that's usually the end of life. So we have some experience like that, right? Or resist. We run away. We don't like that. We deny it. We just cut it off, push things away. So pursue and resist are most common choices that we do to some things that we don't like. The third level of choice, I think, is let be. Let be is not letting go. Let be is that, wow, I'm angry. Wow, I'm anxious. All right, let's see what's going on. Let's not do anything and allow it to be right there. Recognize it and just allow it to be there and see what happens. We are not exactly like not doing anything, but we choose to not actively do something, but just curiously, recognizedly knowing something. And embrace is a step forward. Okay, this is what it is. So I try to accept myself. I try to have some compassion to it. I try to realize those are my needs. Oh, poor me. I'm so angry, so anxious. It's okay. I'm here with me. Take a step to embrace it. And finally, most importantly, is let go. Detach from it, dissolve our needs. This is what I need and this is what happened, but it's okay. And if we don't have the yearning, if we don't have the I for anything that happened, if we take the I out of the formula, it's just this happened, that happened, this happened, that happened. It opens up the space to think about what will be the most skillful things, most beneficial things for myself and other people. And I have to say, okay, those are theoretically the choices, but we always respect clients' choices. They make their choices for reasons that we cannot judge. They must have their reasons to make certain choices, including some clients. So they use drugs because since they grew up, drugs is the only thing that they cling on. Their parents use it, and when they're happy, they rely on it. When they're not happy, they rely on it. Like, who are we to judge that? We did not grow up in the same environment. Or like when they resist, when they pursue, what we do is that at least we help people see this is the choice that you made. This is a choice that you made at that moment. Do you still want to make the same choice? Okay, just be aware that you're making the same choice again. If you want to change, if that choice brings you too much suffering, what may be other choices that we can do? So we respect them and walk with them in the process. So for Mayan, a skillful pattern that arises when we talk about the same cycle, then she is able to pause and think about, okay, when my mother criticizes me and rejects me, well, one thing I tried is take some mindful breathing. Sometimes work, sometimes not work so well, or sometimes we are about to fight. I try to take a time out early so that the fight doesn't escalate. And one new thing that I'm learning is that when my mother criticizes me, I try to see from her perspective. Maybe she's just too occupied in her worry that made it difficult to connect with me. Or sometimes I just realizes that her way of connecting with people is criticism. Yes, I don't like it, but this is what it is. And besides that, in some of the sessions, we also do some compassion meditation, that loving kindness, compassion meditation that I help her recollect some of the resources that she received compassion, full embracement from people who were close to her, including her mentors, some of her friends, that she cultivate more herself, and convince herself that actually I'm just a normal girl and I deserve to be loved. And before she talked to her mother again, she realizes that sometimes before I do anything, set my expectation clear. Just realizes that when I do it, I need to be prepared for her criticism because this is a way to try to reciprocate a connection. And sometimes if I don't like that, I will pause and think, do I really need that? Maybe I don't really need that. Maybe just a habit that I want to do it, but I don't really need it. I'm doing fine. And for herself, she chooses not to work so hard and relax and do more exercises and keep on reminding herself, well, I'm just a normal girl. Like, why don't I have to use all those kind of second arrows to keep stepping on myself? Magically, the OCD symptoms are getting a lot better. There was only one session that I tried to do specifically some behavior exercise for OCD symptoms, but it didn't work so well. And the other time we were contemplating on all those kind of things, doing all those mind cultivation. And at the end, she told me, well, she felt much better. In our last session, she told me, I've been to other psychologists, but it didn't work so well because they just pushed me to work on my OCD. What I really appreciate is you didn't push me. Instead, you walked with me. Thank you. Well, to me, is the most important thing. It was, I think it's amazing that I didn't use a traditional approach to just focus too much on the symptoms, but it actually become more effective when I try to be with her, understand the clinging and yearnings and work with them together. And to be honest, many of the things that happened is not what I was capable to do. But because I was there with her and her wisdom guide her to do things for herself, and she suffered from much less anxiety and OCD, and her relationship with mother was much more tolerable. So I think this is sometimes the magic of counseling and having faith in people's wisdom. So because of that, I do want to summarize the whole approach into a compassionate attunement, because without compassionate attunement, we cannot do anything. And I really like the quote from Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh. He said, "We evoke your name, Avalokiteshvara, which is Guan Yin in Chinese culture. We aspire to learn your way of listening in order to help relieve the suffering in the world. You know how to listen in order to understand. We evoke your name in order to practice listening with all our attention and open-heartedness. We will sit and listen without any prejudice. We will sit and listen without judging or reacting. We will sit and listen in order to understand. We will sit and listen so attentively that we will be able to hear what the other person is saying and also what the other person is leaving unsaid. We know that just by listening deeply, we alleviate a great deal of pain and suffering in another person." This is a very meaningful quote for me because, well, I am an anxious person. I try my best to be a competent person just like me, and but when I cling onto that, when I hold onto those kind of thoughts, it just pulls me away from what is the most important thing, which is a deep connection with people's suffering. In contrast, many times when I don't know what I should do, when I don't know what to do, when I feel helpless, when I feel like, oh, I suck, I cannot do it, as long as I can attune my mind into just listen to the person suffering and don't think about what to do, think about how to be with better, then magic happens. Both of us may think of something that we can do, or think of a better way to see it, accept it, or generate compassion to it. And the problem is no longer as bad as the problem. It's just part of life. So if you're interested in all those kind of things I've said, you're welcome to buy the book here. And for anyone here, besides all those, raise your hand that I'll try to ship you a copy. You can do this discount code. You can do this discount code FLR23 in the Routledge website and get a 20% off. So to end with, before I take any questions, I just want to thank you again for all the time and attention. I know that it's long and a lot of information, but it's just a huge privilege for me to be able to connect with you and make friends with you. So thank you again, and I'm open to questions. Thank you. Okay. So let's see. Maybe I'll try to take some question because it's going to be over time. So there's one question about internal, external, strictly defined. Yeah, you know, Ernest, this is a great question. When I wrote the book, I was thinking internal, external as mine, external all other things over mine. But later, actually, I changed my thought. I think internal can be defined as the 5 aggregates, both body and mind. And external is all other things happening in the body and mind. But because of I try to be congruent with the book idea, but then later I will switch the idea into inside the 5 aggregates and outside the 5 aggregates. I think that may be easier to understand and easy to use. And then if I ever have a second edition of the book, I will change it too. Yeah, I think it doesn't have to be strictly defined. And to be very honest, I actually think what I'm doing, a lot of the things can be much better, can have a lot more different way of interpreting or better way of applying. But the value of what I'm doing, that I hope is inspiration to do a bold attempt to use Buddhism into a counseling model, so that once it sparkles, all of you guys, highly intelligent people with a lot of your own thoughts, can use that, or not use that, but inspired to do something so that you can develop your own approach for people that resonate with you. So this is the main thing. So I welcome those comments. And also I wrote in the book that if you want, you can just take anything and modify your own good to help people around you. Thank you. Well, craving for non-existence, I think there are many scholarly interpretations, but for me, I may not be totally correct, but in counseling, the easiest to understand would be all of us supposedly want to exist. Like, I mean, on top of craving for existence, but then all of us assume that there is a self, there is an I. Craving for non-existence is that the I bring me too much dukkha. I hate it. I don't want it. I want to hurt myself or kill myself. So this is my way of seeing craving for non-existence. That maybe like not all the scholars agree with that, but then it would be the most congruent way that I can relate to counseling. Because some of the clients that I've seen that have a suicidal ideation, they hate something about themselves so much, such as their body. Like there's one client have a strong bodily pain, chronic pain that hates oneself so much, or other things that they hate about themselves. So they don't want to exist. And they thought that not existing, having that energy to destroy myself can bring me happiness. But of course, in Buddhism, it's not the way it is. It would just bring more dukkha. Oh, yeah, Albert Ellis' REBT, which is based on patience and acceptance. Oh, I think REBT, CBT, those are great models. And I think in a way, any kind of cognitive-based or cognitive behavioral therapy, they do have a parallel relationship with Buddhism because it also emphasizes on the point of how your cognitions, your perception of the world, of yourself, influence your psychological well-being. But there's some very fundamental differences, including how in Western psychology, most of the time we do assume certain kind of existence of a self, like Sigmund Freud, the intrapsychic model, id, ego, superego, right? Freud would not tell you that, oh, this is a ignorance, or this is a clinging to the five aggregates, or this is fate, this is just a delusion. He would just tell you this is what it is, and we work on that. In Buddhism, it has a different meaning. It say that, okay, there is certain kind of self, but the self is not what we think. It is impermanent. It's based on different conditions, so that in order to liberate from suffering, we need to liberate from the concept of having an inherently existing self. So that actually signified a very important differentiation between my understanding of Buddhist counseling and psychology, because psychology may be more working towards how to be a better self. In Buddhism, working to be a better self is a transitional way going towards non-self. So this will be a big difference, but on the way of reducing suffering, I think many CBT, REBT, and Buddhist counseling thing can be compatible. The most important thing is what kind of Buddhist orientation or concept that we are trying to help our client realize, and then to use intervention to support them. It may be a little tricky, but this is the way that I'm seeing that. Okay. Let's see. What is your to be graduate program to study integrate? Oh, okay. Well, I mean, like this is a very realistic question. And of course, one of the way is to come to the University of Hong Kong to study the Master of Buddhist Counseling. Nairobi University is good. University of the West Buddhist Chaplaincy program is very good. And of course, the Harvard School of Divinity. Those are some of the ways. But of course, Buddhist chaplaincy and Buddhist counseling may be a little different. And from my understanding, the master program that we are doing in Hong Kong U now is very rare in the world. So one of the possibility is this one. But we are also thinking about whether there can be more training like that, more systematic training with supervision that we can help more people to get the sense of Buddhist counseling applying to your work. But in California, University of the West would be the place that I recommend. Do you recommend a psychoanalysis program and bring Buddhist psychoanalysis therapy in the dissertation? Oh, this is a tricky question. I don't know. I don't know because the definition of your psychoanalysis is I don't know, how do you see that? But what I see psychoanalysis is going to a lot of subconscious thought and trying to have a catharsis. I think it would be interesting if you compare that with the Buddhist assumption of clinging to the self notion. So because supposedly the conflict between psychoanalysis and Buddhism is whether the self notion is fake or realistic, right? but along the way of how psychoanalysis help people get in touch with that kind of intrapsyche can be pretty helpful in Buddhism to help people understand how do we cling on to ourselves. Well, always give an example, like, of course, Buddhism, especially all these early sutras, they keep talking about how to liberate from the self, how to dispassion, how to relinquish from all the clinging, right? So it easily give a person a feeling that Buddhism, early Buddhism is all about liberating from the notion of self, something like that. It is true, but on the way of doing that, I would think we need to understand very well what is the self, how do we cling on to it before we can let it go. Such as if I'm grasping onto this thing very, very, very tightly, what is the first thing I want to do if I let it go? What should I do if I want to let it go? You may think like, just let go of it, just relax. Those are good answers, but no. The first thing I need to do is to be aware of the fact that I'm holding it tight. If I don't know I'm holding it tight, if I don't know it's painful, I cannot let it go. Just like if you tell anyone, let go of yourself, let go of self-notion. All the 73 people, let go of your self-notion. Did anyone reach Nibbana in the last second? No, right? Because we don't know how we are doing it. So getting awareness to how we are holding on to something would be a step to how do we step by step let it go. Well, I mean, for advice, you can get my email from the center website. And okay, wow. Okay, I think I tried to answer all the questions. Thank you again for the great questions and answer. And if you're interested, you can always email me from the center website to get a conversation about that. And I think Buddhist counseling is a very new field. And me, my master Venerable Yin Hong and all the team members, we try very hard to build it, but we are very limited. And I think if we have the confidence that Buddha Dharma can be helpful to people, the only way to do it is to gather all the people who have the same sense and do it together. So hopefully this is one of the starting point that no matter where you are in the world, we can try to think about Buddhist counseling as one of the way of treatment and do it together, and then the world will have less suffering. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you once again, Dr. Lee, for sharing your insight with us today. And thank you all for joining us today, and hope to see you all in our future events. Thank you very much.